A person reading an academic paper is trying to understand a complex text that's new to them. They want to know what it's about, they want to understand its background or context, and they want to see its goals or purpose. An explicit and detailed overview will help you show the importance and relevance of your work and set up the reader's expectations for your paper. In academic writing, contextualization leads the reader from a general subject area to a particular field of research. Here is a 5-step approach to writing a contextualization. Step 1. Explain briefly the historical background that shaped the topic. For example, carbon dioxide emissions, primarily from the combustion of fossil fuels, have risen dramatically since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Step 2. Expose relevant contexts such as the cultural, social, economic, political, geographical, technological and disciplinary contexts that influence the perspectives of your paper. Step 3. Refer briefly to other scholars who've recently contributed to the field. If you're studying carbon emissions in China, cite a recent scholar in environment and energy development. Step 4. Explore how your analysis fits into a larger discussion about the topic. What does your analysis of carbon emissions in China contribute to the field and change in how scholars should go about analysing carbon emissions? And finally, step 5. Evaluate your topic of research by comparing it to others. An analysis of carbon emissions in China could mention similarities and differences between studies in different countries around the world. Writing is a very important part of science. It's used to document and communicate activities, ideas and findings to others. Scientific writing can take many forms, from a lab notebook to a project report, and from a paper in an academic journal to an article in a scientific magazine. Good scientific writing features the following characteristics. It's clear and it avoids unnecessary detail. It's simple and it uses direct language, avoiding vague or complicated sentences. It's structured logically, so that ideas and processes are expressed in a logical order. It should also be accurate and avoid vague and ambiguous language such as about, almost, maybe. And it's also objective. That means that your statements and ideas are supported by evidence that demonstrates how your conclusions have been drawn and acknowledges the work of others. Apart from general linguistic features, this mini-lecture will focus on 2 of the grammatical features of scientific writing: voice and tense. In terms of voice, scientific writers often try to avoid the use of personal expressions or statements in order to make their writing impartial and formal. The following sentence has been written with both personal and impersonal expressions to highlight the contrast between the 2 styles. The impersonal goes like this. The explanation for this phenomenon may be found in ... Whereas the personal, I believe that the explanation for this phenomenon may be found in. Scientific writers have a tendency to use passive rather than active expressions. Stating that A was affected by B uses the passive voice, while stating that B did something to A uses an active voice. In this example, it's quite clear. The experiment was designed by the research officer. The research officer designed the experiment. The passive voice is particularly useful when you wish your writing to be formal and depersonalized. It was agreed that the experiment should be, as opposed to we agreed that the experiment should be. It is also useful when information about the agent is obvious or unimportant, or you don't wish the reader to know. For example, the water pipe was broken in 3 places. Someone had broken the water pipe in 3 places. Extra solvent was added to the flask. The technician added extra solvent to the flask. It's clear here that the agent is unnecessary, and so a passive voice should be used. The passive voice can sometimes lead to clumsy and overcomplicated sentences. Take the following example. Difficulty was experienced in obtaining the product in a high state of purity. It would be easier to simply say, the product was difficult to purify. In general, the active voice is clearer, more direct and easier to read, but the passive voice can be more appropriate in particular circumstances. It's important for you to be aware of how you are writing and how the voice that you choose affects the tone and the meanings of your words. The other grammatical point we're going to cover is the use of tense in scientific writing. Scientific writing frequently uses the past tense, particularly when the main focus is to describe experiments or observations, particularly ones that took place prior to the time of writing. For example, the data were analysed, the temperature was recorded. However, the past tense may not be appropriate for everything that you write, and sometimes you'll need to combine different tenses. For example, the use of different tenses can help to clarify what happened or what you did in the past, what you conclude now, and what would be an issue in the future. The following sentences should help to show how different tenses can be used to achieve clarity in your written work. The experiment was carried out in a sterile environment. It is particularly important to avoid contamination. It will be necessary to ensure that the same conditions are replicated in future experiments. An appropriate use of past, present and future tenses like this can contribute to a clear and unambiguous writing style.